What would you do if a notorious crime syndicate boss offered you $2 million just to wear his diamond ring? Harper thought it was a simple transaction. Smile for the cameras, survive the galas, and walk away rich. But one night of broken rules changed everything, leaving her secretly carrying the heir to a deadly underworld empire. Harper sat in the dimly lit corner of a high-end Manhattan coffee shop, her fingers trembling as she stared at the past-due medical bills stacked in front of her. Her younger sister, Madison, was fighting a rare autoimmune disease, and the experimental treatments at Mount Sinai Hospital were draining every cent Harper made as a freelance event planner. The eviction notices were piling up at her cramped apartment in Hell's Kitchen, and the walls were rapidly closing in. She needed a miracle. Instead, she got Elias Montgomery. Elias was a man who didn't fit in the bustling, casual atmosphere of the cafe. He wore a bespoke charcoal suit that screamed old money, and his silver hair was slicked back impeccably. He slid into the booth opposite Harper without being invited, placing a thick, unmarked manila envelope on the table. "Harper Hayes," Elias said, his voice a low, gravelly hum that demanded absolute attention. "I represent a man who is in need of a very specific, highly confidential service. A service you are uniquely qualified to provide, given your current financial distress." Harper's defensive instincts flared. "Who are you? And how do you know about my finances?" "My employer is Dominic Russo," Elias replied, ignoring her questions. The name sent a chill down Harper's spine. Everyone in New York knew the Russo name, even if they pretended not to. They owned legitimate shipping companies and luxury real estate, but the whispers in the city's underbelly painted a much darker picture. Dominic Russo was the recently crowned head of the Russo family, following his father's sudden, violent passing. He was ruthless, untouchable, and dangerously reclusive. "Mr. Russo is stepping into a highly scrutinized role," Elias continued, folding his hands over the table. "The older generation, the men who sit on the commission, do not trust a bachelor. They view a man without a wife and family as a man with nothing to lose, and therefore a liability. Dominic needs to project stability, tradition, and respectability. He needs a wife. Immediately." Harper let out a breathless, incredulous laugh. "And you want me to plan the wedding?" "No, Miss Hayes," Elias said, his expression completely devoid of humor. "He wants you to be the bride." Before she could stand up and walk away from what had to be an elaborate, dangerous joke, Elias slid the envelope toward her. "Inside is a cashier's check for $200,000. Consider it a signing bonus. The contract is for 1 year. You will receive $2 million upon completion, tax-free, deposited into an offshore account in your name. Madison's hospital bills will be paid in full by tomorrow morning. All of them." Harper froze, her eyes locked on the edge of the envelope. $2 million. Madison's life saved, her debts erased. The sheer gravity of the offer anchored her to the seat. "Why me?" she whispered. "You have no living relatives besides your sister. No current romantic attachments. Your background is spotless. Your public demeanor as an event planner is polished. And most importantly, you are entirely dependent on the money we are offering. You won't ask questions, and you won't step out of line." The next evening, Harper found herself stepping out of a blacked-out SUV in front of the Obsidian, a highly exclusive private members club in Tribeca. Her heart hammered wildly against her ribs. She was escorted through the velvet-draped corridors, past heavily armed men in tailored suits, until she reached the VIP lounge. There he was, Dominic Russo. He was standing by the floor-to-ceiling window, looking out over the glittering city skyline. When he turned, the air in the room seemed to evaporate. Dominic was violently handsome, with sharp aristocratic features, dark eyes that held the cold depths of a winter ocean, and an imposing physical presence that made the massive room feel instantly claustrophobic. He wore a midnight blue Tom Ford suit that fit his broad shoulders flawlessly. "Miss Hayes," Dominic said. His voice was smoother than Elias's, like dark velvet, but it carried an undeniable edge of command. He didn't offer his hand. He simply gestured to the leather sofa. "Sit." Harper forced her chin up, refusing to let her knees shake as she took a seat. "Mr. Russo, I read the contract." "Then you understand the parameters," Dominic said, pouring himself a glass of amber liquid from a crystal decanter. He didn't offer her one. "This is a business transaction, nothing more. In public, you will be the adoring, devoted wife. You will smile for the paparazzi, you will charm the older bosses at dinners, and you will wear my name as a shield. In private, we live separate lives. You will have your own wing in my penthouse. You will not enter my office. You will not ask about my business. We do not touch unless there are cameras or eyes on us." "And after a year?" Harper asked, her voice surprisingly steady. "We file for a quiet, amicable divorce. You take your $2 million, and you disappear." Dominic took a slow sip of his drink, his dark eyes studying her like a predator assessing a fragile bird. "But understand this, Harper. In my world, weakness is blood in the water. If you slip up, if you show fear in front of my rivals, they won't just come after me. They will come after you." Harper thought of Madison, lying in a sterile hospital bed, her skin pale and her breathing shallow. She thought of the eviction notices. She looked Dominic Russo dead in the eye. "Where do I sign?" she asked. A faint, almost imperceptible ghost of a smirk touched Dominic's lips. He pulled a Mont Blanc pen from his breast pocket and slid the thick legal document across the glass table as Harper signed her name, binding herself to one of the most dangerous men in America. She felt the heavy, suffocating weight of the underworld close around her. The devil had made his deal, and Harper was officially a Russo. The wedding was a spectacular, terrifying illusion. Held at the iconic Plaza Hotel, the ballroom was dripping in white orchids, crystal chandeliers, and an atmosphere thick with unspoken threats. Harper wore a custom Vera Wang gown that cost more than her entire college education, the silk heavy against her skin. On her left ring finger sat a breathtaking, flawless 4-carat diamond, a heavy, sparkling shackle. Every smile she flashed was calculated. Every time Dominic placed his hand on the small of her back, the heat of his touch seared through the silk of her dress, sending a confusing jolt of adrenaline through her veins. To the outside world, and to the glittering sociopaths dining on caviar around them, they were the picture of a fiercely passionate power couple. "Smile, mia cara," Dominic murmured against her ear during the reception, his breath warm, his tone perfectly loving for the benefit of the onlookers. "Carmine is watching." Harper subtly glanced toward the head table. Carmine Falco, the elderly, ruthless boss of the commission, was staring at them with hooded, calculating eyes. Carmine was the reason this charade existed. He was the one demanding Dominic prove his stability. "I am smiling, Dominic," Harper whispered back, keeping her teeth gritted behind perfectly glossed lips. "If I smile any harder, my face is going to shatter." Dominic chuckled, a rich, dark sound that actually sounded genuine, and for a split second, Harper forgot they were acting. He pulled her closer, his thumb stroking her waist. "You're doing perfectly. Keep it up, and we'll both survive this." The first 3 months of their fake marriage were a masterclass in psychological endurance. Harper moved into Dominic's sprawling, multi-million-dollar penthouse in Tribeca. True to his word, she had her own wing, her own schedule, and a bottomless platinum credit card. But the isolation was deafening. She was surrounded by bodyguards, unable to go anywhere without an escort. Dominic was a ghost in his own home. He would leave before dawn and return long after midnight, often with bruised knuckles or smelling of cigar smoke and copper. But whenever they had a public function, a charity gala, an opera premiere, a dinner with the commission, they seamlessly transformed into the devoted husband and wife. The lines began to blur in late November. Carmine Falco had summoned the top families for a weekend retreat at his heavily fortified, sprawling estate in the remote Catskill Mountains. It was meant to be a show of unity, but Dominic knew it was a thinly veiled interrogation. When they arrived at the grand Gothic-style mansion amidst a howling snowstorm, Carmine's right-hand man greeted them with a greasy, apologetic smile. "Mr. Russo, Mrs. Russo, so glad you made it. Unfortunately, due to a scheduling oversight, we only have one primary suite available for you this weekend. I trust the newlyweds won't mind sharing." Harper felt the blood drain from her face. She looked at Dominic, expecting him to demand another room. Instead, Dominic's jaw tightened, his eyes narrowing as he recognized the trap. Carmine was testing them. He wanted to see if the rumors of a business arrangement marriage were true. "Not at all," Dominic said smoothly, pulling Harper tightly against his side. "My wife and I prefer to be close." The suite was luxurious, featuring a massive stone fireplace and a sprawling antique four-poster bed. As soon as the heavy mahogany door clicked shut, Harper backed away from Dominic, her heart pounding. "What do we do?" she asked, her voice trembling slightly. "I can sleep on the floor." "Don't be ridiculous," Dominic snapped, shedding his suit jacket and unbuttoning his collar. "There are cameras in the hallways and likely listening devices in here. Carmine is a paranoid old snake. If we don't act like a married couple, we're dead." The tension in the room was suffocating. That night, dinner was a battlefield of veiled insults and subtle threats. A rival underboss, a vicious man named Lorenzo, cornered Harper near the grand staircase, his eyes raking over her body with terrifying hunger. "A beautiful bird in a very dangerous cage," Lorenzo whispered, stepping entirely too close. "When Dominic inevitably falls, you should come find me, Harper." Before Harper could react, Dominic materialized from the shadows. He didn't yell. He didn't make a scene. He simply stepped between Harper and Lorenzo, his presence radiating a lethal, icy fury. "If you ever speak to my wife again, Lorenzo," Dominic said, his voice dropping to a terrifyingly quiet whisper, "I will rip your tongue from your throat and feed it to my hounds. Walk away." Lorenzo sneered, but the genuine fear in his eyes betrayed him as he backed off. Dominic grabbed Harper's hand, his grip bruisingly tight, and marched her back to their suite. The adrenaline of the confrontation was crashing through them both. As soon as the door locked, Harper turned on him, her emotions finally boiling over. "You told me I would be safe," she yelled in a hushed, furious whisper, remembering the potential listening devices. "You told me if I played the part, I'd be fine." "You are safe," Dominic fired back, closing the distance between them until they were inches apart. "I just proved that." "I'm terrified, Dominic. Every day I wake up wondering if someone is going to put a bullet in my head just to get to you." She hit his chest with the palm of her hand, a futile gesture of frustration. Dominic caught her wrists. He was breathing hard, his dark eyes completely consumed by an intensity she had never seen before. The mask of the cold, calculating Mafia boss fractured, revealing the fiercely passionate man beneath. "I won't let them touch you," he murmured, his voice dropping into a rough, desperate cadence. "Do you hear me? I won't let anyone touch you." He didn't pull away. Harper didn't step back. The adrenaline, the fear, and the months of suppressed, simmering tension ignited in a singular, reckless moment. Dominic's mouth crashed down on hers, fierce and consuming. Harper knew it was a mistake, a catastrophic violation of their contract, but the fear of the day melted away under the heat of his touch. For the first time since they met, it wasn't an act for the cameras. It was real, raw, and entirely forbidden. The next morning, the snowstorm broke, and so did the spell. Dominic withdrew completely. His walls slammed back up, thicker and colder than before. On the drive back to Manhattan, they sat in the back of the SUV in agonizing silence. Dominic stared out the window, effectively erasing the vulnerability of the night before. He was the boss again, and she was just the hired help. Harper swallowed the ache in her chest, reminding herself of the $2 million and Madison's health. She packed the memory of that night away in a small, dark corner of her mind, resolving to finish out the remaining 8 months of her contract with a heart of stone. But life, much like the underworld Dominic ruled, rarely adhered to the rules of a contract. 6 weeks later, Harper stood barefoot on the cold marble floor of her extravagant ensuite bathroom in the Tribeca penthouse. The world around her seemed to tilt violently on its axis. Her hands shook uncontrollably as she stared down at the small plastic stick resting on the vanity. 2 pink lines. The realization hit her with the force of a freight train. She was not just the fake wife of the city's most dangerous Mafia boss. She was carrying his child. Harper stared at the undeniable proof resting on the cold marble counter, her reflection in the gilded mirror pale and terrified. A baby. She was carrying the heir to the Russo crime family. The meticulously crafted contract, the $2 million, the clear boundaries, the promise of a quiet exit, had just been obliterated by 2 pink lines. If Dominic found out, he would never let her leave. In his ruthless, archaic world, blood was everything. A child was leverage, a weakness, and an asset all at once. If the commission discovered she was pregnant, the baby would become a permanent target in a never-ending turf war. For the next 4 weeks, Harper lived in a state of suffocating paranoia. She became an expert at deception, masking her morning sickness as fatigue from her sister's ongoing medical care. Her visits to Mount Sinai Hospital became her only sanctuary. During one such visit, Dr. William Kessler, a leading specialist in autoimmune disorders, delivered the news she had been praying for since the nightmare began. "Madison is responding beautifully to the experimental treatments," Dr. Kessler announced, reviewing the chart with a hopeful smile. "Her markers are down across the board. We are officially looking at the early stages of remission, Harper. Whatever strings you pulled to fund this, it saved her life." Tears of profound relief had spilled down Harper's cheeks, but the victory tasted fiercely bitter. She had sold her soul to the devil to save her sister, and now the devil was unknowingly collecting a terrifying collateral. Back at the Tribeca penthouse, the atmosphere between Harper and Dominic had descended into an icy, impenetrable freeze. Since their forbidden night in the Catskills, Dominic had retreated entirely behind his armor. He was colder, sharper, and utterly ruthless. The city's underground was trembling under his newly consolidated power, and Harper only saw him during their mandatory public appearances, where his touch felt more like a brand than an embrace. The breaking point arrived on a rainy Tuesday evening in late January. The Russos were expected to attend a high-profile charity gala hosted at the Guggenheim Museum. Harper wore a sweeping emerald gown designed to conceal the slight, terrifying softening of her usually flat stomach. The museum's rotunda was packed with the city's elite, a dangerous mix of legitimate billionaires and the well-dressed mobsters who operated in their shadows. Dominic was immediately pulled away by Elias to handle a dispute with the harbor unions, leaving Harper to navigate the shark-infested waters of the gala alone. She stood near a towering abstract sculpture, nursing a glass of sparkling cider disguised as champagne, when a chillingly familiar voice slithered over her shoulder. "You look radiant, Mrs. Russo. Or should I say, mother-to-be." Harper froze, her blood turning to ice in her veins. She slowly turned to face Lorenzo. The rival underboss looked incredibly smug, his eyes dropping deliberately to her waistline before rising to meet her terrified gaze. "What are you talking about?" Harper demanded, keeping her voice completely level despite the violent hammering of her heart. Lorenzo stepped closer, crowding her against the base of the sculpture. "Did you really think you could keep a secret like that in Dominic's own fortress? I pay a lot of money to the staff who clean your immaculate bathrooms, Harper. A discarded pharmacy box, a little morning sickness. It doesn't take a genius. The real question is, does your fake husband know that his billion-dollar empire has a new heir?" Harper's breath hitched. She scanned the room frantically, but Dominic was nowhere to be seen. "Here is the reality of your situation," Lorenzo whispered, his tone dripping with malice. "Carmine Falco hates unpredictable variables. If I tell the commission that Dominic violated his own business arrangement, that his marriage is a messy, emotional liability resulting in a bastard child, Carmine will strip him of his title. Dominic will be executed, and you will be left entirely unprotected. But if you quietly leave this gala with me tonight, I will hide you. I will use the child to leverage my own seat at the head of the table, and you get to live. Choose carefully, Harper. Dominic's empire is built on glass, and I am holding the hammer." Panic, pure and blinding, seized her throat. Lorenzo wasn't offering safety. He was offering a different cage, one where her child would be raised as a hostage. She had to find Dominic. "If you take one step toward the exit, my men outside will grab you," Lorenzo warned, reading her mind. "Walk to the service elevators in the back. Now." Harper's survival instincts, honed by months of living in the predator's den, finally snapped into focus. She didn't cower. She looked Lorenzo dead in the eye, channeling every ounce of Dominic's cold authority. "If you think I'm walking into a basement with you, you are severely underestimating me. If you touch me, Dominic will burn your entire bloodline to the ground." Ooh. Lorenzo's smug smile vanished, replaced by a flash of genuine rage. He reached out, his hand gripping her wrist with bone-crushing force. "You stupid, arrogant—" Suddenly, the deafening shatter of glass echoed through the Guggenheim rotunda. The massive skylight above them splintered as armed men in tactical gear stormed the upper ramps. Screams erupted from the crowd. The gala instantly dissolved into absolute chaos. Lorenzo swore violently, momentarily distracted by the gunfire echoing from the second floor. It was all the opening Harper needed. She ripped her wrist from his grasp and bolted into the terrified, surging crowd. The museum was a war zone. Harper shoved past panicked billionaires and fleeing socialites, her emerald gown tearing as she desperately navigated the stampede toward the grand entrance. Gunfire cracked through the air, deafening and relentless. Lorenzo's men had staged a coup, turning a public charity event into a bloodbath to assassinate Dominic and seize the commission. "Harper!" The voice ripped through the chaos, commanding and furious. Dominic was suddenly there, emerging from the smoke and screaming crowd like an avenging demon. His tuxedo jacket was gone, his white shirt stained with someone else's blood, and he held a matte black customized Glock in his right hand. He didn't hesitate. He grabbed Harper by the waist, practically lifting her off her feet as he hauled her behind a massive marble pillar, just as a barrage of bullets shredded the wall where she had been standing seconds before. "Are you hit?" Dominic demanded, his hands frantically checking her shoulders, her arms, and finally resting firmly on her stomach. His dark eyes locked onto hers, filled with a primal, terrifying intensity. "Tell me you're not hurt." "I'm fine," she gasped, trembling violently against his chest. "Dominic, Lorenzo knows. He knows about—" "I know what he knows." Dominic cut her off, his voice a low, dangerous rumble. He pulled her flush against him, shielding her entirely with his own body. "Elias uncovered the leak in the penthouse staff yesterday. Lorenzo moved his timeline up because he realized I was coming for him. Stay exactly behind me." Before Harper could process the fact that Dominic already knew about the baby, Elias and a half-dozen of the Russo family's most lethal enforcers materialized from the shadows, forming an impenetrable, heavily armed wall around them. "The perimeter is secured, boss," Elias shouted over the sirens wailing outside. "Lorenzo's men are neutralized. Lorenzo is cornered in the loading dock." Dominic's eyes darkened to pitch black. "Get my wife to the car. If a single scratch appears on her, I will hold you all personally responsible." "Dominic, no!" Harper cried out, grabbing his blood-stained sleeve. "Don't go down there." Dominic paused. The cold, untouchable Mafia boss faded, and the man who had kissed her with desperate passion in the Catskills returned. He cupped her face, his thumb swiping a streak of soot from her cheek. "This contract was void the second I realized I couldn't live without you, Harper," he whispered fiercely over the noise. "I knew about the baby. I pulled back because I needed to clean house. I needed to build a world where you and our child would never have to look over your shoulders. Give me 10 minutes to finish this, and I swear to you, the violence ends tonight." He kissed her hard, a promise sealed in blood and gunpowder, and turned, disappearing into the smoke toward the loading dock. The next 48 hours were a blur of flashing police lights, aggressive lawyers, and strategic cover-ups. Elias managed the media fallout brilliantly, spinning the attack as an attempted robbery, thwarted by Dominic's private security. Lorenzo was never seen again. Carmine Falco, realizing the sheer, terrifying scope of Dominic's power and the absolute loyalty of his men, quietly stepped down from the commission, retiring to Sicily and leaving Dominic as the undisputed king of the underworld. When the dust finally settled, Harper stood on the balcony of the Tribeca penthouse, wrapped in a thick cashmere blanket, watching the sun rise over the Hudson River. Madison was safely transferred to a private, highly secure luxury rehabilitation facility in Switzerland, her medical future entirely guaranteed. The heavy glass door slid open, and Dominic stepped out into the frigid morning air. He looked exhausted, the weight of his newly solidified empire resting on his broad shoulders. But when he looked at Harper, the hardness in his eyes melted away completely. He walked over to her, wrapping his arms securely around her waist from behind and resting his chin on her shoulder. His large, warm hand splayed gently over her stomach. "It's done," Dominic murmured against her hair. "The internal threats are buried. The commission answers only to me now. No one will ever threaten my family again." Harper leaned back against his solid chest, the lingering fear finally beginning to evaporate from her bones. She reached into her pocket and pulled out the crumpled, blood-smudged contract they had signed months ago. "So what happens to this?" she asked softly. "My year isn't up." Dominic took the heavy parchment from her hands. Without a moment of hesitation, he ripped the document in half and then in quarters, letting the pieces scatter into the cold morning wind, disappearing over the edge of the balcony. "There is no contract, Harper," Dominic said, turning her around to face him. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a simple, elegant gold band, sliding it onto her finger to rest right beneath the massive, flashy diamond she had worn for the cameras. "There is only my wife and my child. For real. Forever." Harper looked up into the dark, bottomless eyes of the most dangerous man in New York, and for the first time since she met him, she felt entirely, undeniably safe. She pulled him down, kissing him softly as the city woke up below them. A new empire built not on fear, but on a love that had defied every odd. Did Harper and Dominic's dangerous journey leave you completely breathless? If you loved this intense Mafia romance story, filled with secrets, betrayal, and unexpected twists, make sure to hit that like button. Don't forget to share this video with your fellow romance drama lovers, and subscribe to our channel for more thrilling, high-stakes, real-life inspired stories. Drop a comment below telling us what you thought of Dominic's ultimate sacrifice. Turn on notifications so you never miss our next dramatic upload.